It begins with the sound of children's laughter, faint, distant, almost like an echo carried by the wind through the Ozark hills. Then silence, a silence so deep it feels unnatural. In the summer of 1888, farmers in the Missouri Ozark would later claim they sometimes heard scratching under the ground at night, as if wooden boards were being clawed from the inside. But when they dug, they found nothing. Nothing but disturbed earth and the faint smell of pine. What those parents had done, what the town had conspired to ignore, would never be written into official history. It lingered only in whispers, in unmarked plots, in the hollow stares of grieving families who were not grieving at all. This is not just a story of loss. It is a story of faith so warped it became monstrous. Marrow Creek was not on any railroad line, nor did it appear on government maps until decades later. A town of a few hundred, it was self-sustaining, farmers, blacksmiths, mill workers, and above all, church-goers. The church was the anchor, twice on Sundays, Wednesday evenings, prayer circles at dawn. The pastor's word was law, and the Bible was not read as metaphor but as binding covenant. Outsiders who visited noted the children, pale, obedient, their eyes lowered. They did not laugh in public. They did not run in the streets. Marrow Creek children seemed less like children, more like offerings, fragile vessels raised to be broken, and yet no one questioned it, not openly. To question faith was to question survival. Pastor Elijah Raines preached with a voice that cut like stone against glass. His sermons were long, punishing, filled with scripture twisted into something severe and strange. The wages of sin. He would thunder, may be cleansed only by returning the child unto the earth before corruption has ripened. Mothers wept in pews, fathers clenched their fists, and the children sat still, absorbing every word like poison. Raines claimed that disobedient children carried seeds of rot that could infect entire families. To save the community, sometimes purity had to be enforced. Families were told that obedience was eternal salvation, but disobedience would curse generations. And so began the quiet burials. The first child vanished in June. Her name was Ruthie Hall, 8 years old. She was said to have spoken back to her father at supper. Within a week, she was gone. The official word was that she had wandered into the woods and been taken by wolves. But the townsfolk knew wolves did not leave square patches of freshly packed soil behind the hall barn. Ruthie's mother's eyes were swollen red, yet her lips trembled with something closer to pride than grief. She whispered in church that her daughter had been redeemed in the soil. People nodded solemnly as though a sacred ritual had been performed. The story of Ruthie was not told outside the church. Her grave was not marked. They used crates, not coffins, not graves dug by carpenters, but farm crates, the kind used to store apples, corn, or kindling. Children were placed inside alive, their cries muffled by hymn, singing, and the scraping of shovels. The earth swallowed their screams, and the parents, God, fearing, trembling, broken, believed they were saving their children's souls. In the dim candlelight of the church basement, crates lined the wall, waiting. Some carved with crosses, some with verses etched into the wood. Each parent believed it was their holy duty. The crates became both altar and tomb. The first record comes from a traveling salesman, Arthur Wexler, who wrote in his leather-bound journal. He stayed in Marrow Creek for 3 nights and noted the odd atmosphere. Doors locked at sundown, children kept silent, a smell of turned soil in the fields even though no crops had been planted. He wrote of waking in the night to the sound of a hammer driving nails into wood, followed by faint, muffled wails. It is a place of funerals without death, Wexler wrote, a place where innocence is entombed while it yet breathes. Days later, he fled the town. His journal, discovered in St. Louis decades later, was dismissed as drunken rambling. It was not every family who participated, only those most devout, most fearful, most under the sway of Raines, the Fletchers, the Crawfords, the Lattimores, the Hall family. They came to church not just with Bibles, but with soil still under their fingernails. Fathers dug shallow graves, mothers sewed linen shrouds, brothers and sisters hummed hymns as the crates were lowered. To outsiders, these were ordinary families, hardworking, polite, pious. But within their homes, prayers were whispered like confessions, and children lived in terror of the smallest mistake. A broken plate, a forgotten verse, a giggle at the wrong time. Not every child buried belonged to their parents. Marrow Creek had an orphanage run by the church, housing children left behind by death, sickness, or poverty. These children had no one to protect them, no one to question when they disappeared. At night, wagons rolled silently from the orphanage to the churchyard. The children screamed, clawed, resisted, but in a town where silence was salvation, no one heard them, or pretended not to. In some cases, entire groups of orphans vanished overnight, their beds stripped clean, their names erased from records. The church ledger listed them only as redeemed. By August, the ground around Marrow Creek was restless. Farmers found patches of soil sinking unevenly, as though air pockets had formed beneath the earth. Dogs barked and whined at certain spots, pawing frantically before being dragged away. Some children whispered of hearing voices in the fields, bleeding, desperate, too faint for adults to notice. Those who listened closely said it sounded like prayer spoken through dirt. The town avoided those places. They built fences, planted corn to cover them, but the ground would not stay silent. Only one person dared question openly, Miss Clara Hensley, the town's school teacher. She noticed the empty desks. She counted the children who never returned after summer. She spoke quietly at first, then more urgently, warning parents that something unspeakable was happening. Pastor Raines denounced her from the pulpit, calling her an enemy of salvation. Within a month, she vanished. Her home was left intact, her books neatly stacked, her shoes by the door. Some said she left in shame. Others whispered that she too had been buried, an adult sealed in a crate meant for children. Autumn came. The harvest was unusually bountiful, corn tall and golden, apples bursting red. The townsfolk claimed it was proof of God's blessing, that the sacrifices had cleansed the soil and returned abundance. At the harvest festival, pies were eaten, hymns sung, sermons preached about obedience, but beneath the tables and laughter lay a gnawing unease. Parents looked at their remaining children with both love and suspicion, wondering which might next be chosen. The crates did not stop with summer. They continued, hidden behind barn doors, lowered into shallow pits as frost hardened the ground. In late November, a hunter from a neighboring county stumbled into Marrow Creek. He claimed he found a field where the earth had collapsed, exposing a half-rotted crate. Inside were bones, small, fragile, unmistakably human. He tried to alert authorities in Springfield, but by the time they returned, the field was gone. Fresh earth, smooth and neat, with no sign of collapse. The hunter was mocked, dismissed as drunk, but he never returned to Marrow Creek, and the rumor of buried children lingered like smoke. Winter was the cruelest season. With crops stored and work slowed, the people of Marrow Creek turned inward. Services grew longer, more severe. Pastor Raines demanded even greater obedience. Parents were told to examine their children for signs of unruliness or rot. A dropped prayer book, a missed recitation, a daydream in church, these were enough. Crates were lowered even in frozen soil, hammers cracking nails into stiff wood. Families gathered by candlelight, singing softly while their own blood was buried alive. Not every child buried died. Some were dug up in secret by siblings, by desperate mothers who could not bear it. A few managed to claw through thin soil before suffocation claimed them. These survivors carried scars on their hands, their lungs, their minds. They grew into adults who never spoke of it, who avoided churches, who carried a hollow silence into every room. Their children would notice the way they flinched at hymns, the way they avoided soil freshly turned. Some whispered that survivors became cursed, haunted, unable to live fully after crawling from the earth. Why did no one outside intervene? Why did no county sheriff, no circuit judge, no circuit preacher expose the truth? Records suggest that Marrow Creek was left largely alone. The town paid its taxes, kept its borders, did not cause trouble. Rumors reached nearby towns, but without proof, they were ignored. Some say officials were bribed. Others suggest a deeper conspiracy, that institutions preferred not to see, that silence served order better than truth. After all, what would it mean if entire families, whole congregations, willingly entombed their children alive? Better not to know. By early 1889, Pastor Raines was ill. Some said the soil itself claimed him, that the voices beneath the ground whispered into his dreams, dragging him toward madness. He stopped preaching, stopped leaving his home. Parishioners claimed to hear him muttering scripture backwards, clawing at his own skin. One night in February, his house was found empty. On the floor, dirt scattered in neat circles, as if carried in by invisible hands. His body was never found, but some claimed that on cold nights they could hear his voice still chanting from beneath the earth. Within a decade, Marrow Creek was gone. Families drifted away, farms sold off, homes abandoned to rot. By the turn of the century, nothing remained but foundations, collapsed barns, and a church with a steeple leaning like a broken finger. Travelers through the Ozark Hills spoke of unease, of feeling watched, of hearing faint scratching beneath the soil. Locals warned them not to linger. Maps did not list Marrow Creek. Newspapers never mentioned it. The silence was complete. In 1924, a road crew laying gravel near the old town site unearthed dozens of small skeletons. Some lay curled within crates, their bones pressed tight against nailed wood. Others were scattered, jumbled, as if the earth itself had shifted and swallowed them. The workers reported it, but the sheriff ordered the site filled again. "Nothing here worth troubling the county," he said. The bones were reburied beneath the road, sealed under layers of gravel and tar. The silence resumed. Families who descended from Marrow Creek still carry something in their blood. Fear of authority, fear of questioning, fear of the earth itself. Generations later, grandchildren speak of nightmares where they are trapped in wooden boxes, dirt pouring in through cracks, hymns echoing from above. Some scholars who have traced oral histories claim that the trauma became embedded in the community, an unspoken inheritance. The children of Marrow Creek never escaped their crates, not fully. The Ozark Hills remain quiet now, but the earth is not empty. Beneath roots and stone lie the unmarked crates of Marrow Creek, the God-fearing parents' last testament to obedience. Perhaps the soil has absorbed their cries. Perhaps the roots whisper their names. History refused to remember them, but the land cannot forget. If you walk through those hills at night, stop and listen. Listen for the faint scratching beneath your feet. It may only be the wind through the trees. Or it may be the children of Marrow Creek, still trying to claw their way back to the surface.